Hey everybody, welcome to Off the Shelf Board Game Reviews. This week we're looking at Planet Apocalypse. It's a cooperative 1 to 5 player tower defense game where our players are trying to fight back the hordes of hell. In this game, players are going to cooperatively work together on this game where it's a tower defense game, and the basic idea of a tower defense game is the hordes of hell are going to be slowly advancing on our heroes, and we must work cooperatively using our gifts, using our skills, using our abilities, and a little bit of good old-fashioned luck when it comes to the dice rolls to defeat these hordes and stop them from advancing on us and ending the game. Now the game is going to come to an end one of two different ways. The first way the game is going to come to an end is there's a doom track. If the doom track ever gets to level 13, our heroes have instantly lost the game. It doesn't matter what kind of hit points we have left, what kind of status we have left, or just how close we are to a Hail Mary play. If the doom gets to level 13, our heroes have lost the day. The secondary way the game is going to be lost by our heroes is, like I said, this is a tower defense game, and the idea of a tower defense game is the bad guys are going to be slowly marching towards a starting line, but there's one specific bad guy in every single mission, and that's going to be the Lord. If the Lord ever manages to make it to the starting area, our heroes have instantly lost the game. There's nothing they can do about it. But fortunately, there is one good way for our heroes to win the game. If our heroes can ever make it into the area with the Lord, enter the Helltime battle system, and manage to defeat the Lord in the Helltime, our heroes have won the day, the bad guy has been defeated, and all of our heroes get to rejoice, of course, until the hordes of hell start invading our planet one more time. Now, before we go anywhere, I do need to let you know that there have been a couple rules updates for the game, and I'm actually going to include those rules updates in this tutorial video right here. Most likely, these are going to be the permanent rules that are going to come out when Planet Apocalypse 2.0, or I should say the second circle, which is basically the next Kickstarter for the game, comes out with more content. They've been talking about making a couple minor rules adjustments, and it looks like these are going to be the permanent rules. So what I'm basically trying to avoid here is I'm trying to avoid the same situation with my Cthulhu Wars series of videos where they modify the rules a little bit. And yes, the basic rules for my Cthulhu videos still works. I can still teach you how to play Cthulhu Wars, but if you watch that video, you notice that the turn sequence is a little bit off because they modify the rules just a little bit, which makes that video is a little bit obsolete. So to avoid this video also going obsolete, I'm going to use the rules that are most likely, about 95% sure, that these are going to be the rules that are going to be available in the final 2.0 Kickstarter for the game. So my point of this is if you see something I'm doing and you look at the rulebook and say, that's not what the rulebook says, you're right. It may not be what the rulebook says, but it's definitely what Petersen's Games forums say, and I'm going to take that as the gospel as the new rules because it's from the designer himself. Now, before I teach you how to play a Planet Apocalypse, there's a few definitions that you need to understand for the game, because the game does use some very specific terminology, and terminology is extremely important. It's so important, as a matter of fact, that there's actually one minor error in the rulebook on page 39, which explains how we gain courage. It actually says in the rulebook that only demons give courage. And what they really mean is they really mean minions give courage, and that can be very important when you're talking about the rules of the game, because the game does have a very small, it's a very small lexicon, but it's very, very important to understand that lexicon, because if you don't understand that lexicon, you're going to start making some mistakes when you're trying to learn how to play the game. So just going to go through a couple quick terms really, really quickly and just tell you the terms, tell you exactly what they mean, and that way it's going to make it a lot easier, especially when you start reading the special powers, the special abilities, the gifts, and everything that goes along with this game. Everything's going to make a heck of a lot more sense when you understand every one of these terms in the lexicon. So the first term you need to understand is the term of a minion. Now a minion is every single bad guy in the game from a 0 circle all the way up to a 4 circle, but it's not the Lord of the game. So every single Lord in the game, there's always one Lord every time you play the game. There's always one Lord you're trying to defeat. So the Lord is never ever a minion. He always has his own special miniature. He has his own special board. I shouldn't say he, because there are some she Lords also. So I'll just say they. They have their own hit point tracks, they have their own special abilities, and we'll go over all that stuff when we come into talking about the battles with the Lords and everything like that. But a minion is anything except the Lord. So that means your larva, that means it's your demons, that even means it's your 4 circle demons. A minion is anything except the Lord, and obviously it's not the heroes. The heroes are never going to be minions. Well, maybe John Dark might be, but that's part of his backstory. Shh, don't tell anybody. It's a kind of a cool backstory. The next term we have is a term of demons. Now a demon is anything that has a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, or 4th circle. Basically it's anything except the Lord or a larva. Larvae are considered limbo demon, or sorry, I almost said it there. They're considered a limbo minion. See, that's how important the lexicon is for this game. So a limbo minion is never a demon. The only thing that's a demon is a first, second, third, or fourth circle creature. So basically in this example, a demon would be a Grillus, which is a first circle. It would be a fiend, which is a second circle. It would be a Cacodemon, which is a third circle. Or it's going to be the Catoblepus, or some of the other very nasty fourth circles, which all happen to be demons. Now, I've used the term circle a couple times. So what is a circle? Well, basically as a way of saying just how bad and nasty each one of these little bad guys are. Your minions are always going to come from a certain circle. Your basic weakest ones, your limbo minions, are going to be your zero circle creatures. They're going to be your zero circle minions. Your first circle minions are going to be your Grillus. Again, these are generally your weaker creatures. They're easier to defeat, generally don't hit quite as hard, and they're generally only going to roll one die when it comes to attacking you. Your second circle demons are going to be much more powerful. They're going to roll 2 dice in attacking you, generally speaking, and they're also going to have a higher defense. Finally, you come to your third circle demons, which are generally going to roll 3 attack dice. Again, they're a little bit harder to defeat, and they're going to be doing a little bit more damage against you because you're going to roll 3 dice. Finally, you have your fourth circle demons, and your fourth circle demons are only going to come out under very special circumstances. That's basically when the Lord advances. So basically, you're going to be running into your limbo minions, your first, second, or third level demons, or your fourth circle demon will generally come out once the Lord advances. And they're very powerful, they're very nasty, and they always roll, well, pretty much they always roll 4 attack dice. And they're usually very tough to defeat. And the interesting thing about your fourth circle demons is, unlike all the other minions, they have multiple hit points. And they take multiple hit points to defeat, unlike the rest of the other minions, which can be defeated with 1 successful roll that beats their toughness. Next up, we have a group, and basically a group is all the specific creatures of the same matching circle. So these 3 limbo larvae make up a minion group. These 3 circle 1 demons make up one single group. This second circle demon makes up one single group if he happens to be alone. Same thing with the Cacodemon. Even though they are alone, they do make up one group in a special space. And that's going to be very important when it comes to the combat, so make sure you understand the difference on how the groups work. The next thing we have the Legion. Now the Legion is what's going to add a lot of variety and a lot of challenges for the game, because as the game goes, and as you set up the game in the beginning, there is going to be a Legion in play. Now the base game comes with 4 legions, and there's always a Legion in play. And if the current Legion leaves play, it's always going to be replaced by a new Legion, and that Legion goes into effect immediately and affects every single miniature that's currently in play. And basically what these legions do are they're going to add extra special powers to demons. Emphasis on demons, not on minions. That means a limbo larva will never get a benefit from a legion. But I'm going to give you one caveat there. There is one expansion that does add a legion into the game that does boost up the larva. And again, that's in an expansion, and it's very specific on that legion. It actually says your limbo minions are also boosted by that legion specifically. But basically what this is this is going to be a permanent buff in play for all demons that are currently in play, and it's going to give them a special ability. Whether it's the ability to stun our heroes, whether it's the ability to race up the doom track even faster, or different things, there's always going to be a legion in play. And again, very important, legion boosts up your demons, not your limbo minions, and not your lord. Very, very important. And then finally we get to the Lord or the Lady, which is your eventual goal that you need to defeat to win the game. Defeat the Lord or the Lady and you win the game. They always come with their own special board, and this board is going to be broken up into a couple different areas. I'll just go over this board very, very quickly. The first thing you need to see is you're going to have your hit point track, and the amount of hit points the Lord will have is going to be based on the amount of players, and it's very much listed right here. For example, if we have a 2-hero game, and I should say hero, the amount of heroes, not the amount of players. If we have a 2-hero game, if we have a 3-hero game, 4-hero game, 5-hero game, and again, this specific Lord has a special power with his wall. It's all part of the thing. If you read it, it's pretty darn self-explanatory. But the very, very important thing to understand about all these Lords and Ladies, every one of them is going to have a menace, which is a very special power that's very specific to them, that's going to activate at the start of a battle. They also have a reward, which is something you're going to gain based on things that are going to happen. And it's a way to make our heroes have a couple different advantages when they're fighting this horrible creature. You're also going to see however many attack dice they roll. For example, this one rolls 6d12 attack dice. And you need to understand that our heroes start with 2 toughness. So basically you roll 6 12-siders, and every 12-sider that's a 3 or higher is going to be 1 point of damage. Guess what? Most of our heroes start with 6 hit points. You can do the math and figure out that they can pretty much one-shot our heroes if we don't start raising up our defenses very, very quickly. Finally, you're going to see that every one of our lords has a toughness. Now there's one important thing to understand in this game, and that's the toughness in this game. It's a little bit more unique compared to a lot of other games, but the toughness level is what you need to roll over, which is going to be really confusing for people who play a lot of Games Workshop games. If you play a lot of Games Workshop games, the toughness is usually the number you need to reach or beat to be successful. In this game, it's very specific. You need to roll over the toughness. So that means to hit a larva, you need to roll a 2 or higher. To hit the Grillus, you need to roll a 4 or higher. To hit the Fiend, you need to roll a 7 or higher. To hit the Cacodemon, and this is where things get very, very exciting. If you ever see a number next to a number, that means you need to have 2 dice that are both higher than that number. Which means if I happen to be rolling a 12-sider and a 10-sider, and if on the 12-sider I roll an 11, and then on the 10-sider I roll a 2. Since both those dice are not 5 or higher, I'm not going to do any damage to this creature at all. Now understand, all of our minions from the 0 circle all the way up to the 3rd circle, they all have 1 hit point only. All you need to do is get 1 successful hit above their toughness or their combined toughness level to take them out. It's only the 4th circle and the lords that have more than 1 hit point, so be very careful with that. The more powerful guys are very, very tough to hit. And also understand that when you're attacking, except for very unique special abilities, you're never going to combine dice. You're always going to combine dice, or you're going to compare dice on a 1-for-1 basis. So like I said earlier, when I rolled that 10-sider and a 12-sider, I can't add these 2 numbers together to get 8 to defeat this Fiend unless I have a special power that does so. So if my hero rolled a 10-sider and a 12-sider to attack, and I was attacking a Fiend in a fight, and I rolled a 2 and a 6, he has a 6 toughness. Guess what? Even though both those dice together are higher than the toughness, no single die is higher than his toughness, so he is not going to take any damage. With these guys, it's an all or nothing between the 0 all the way up to the 3rd circle bad guys. And while we're on the concept of dice, let's go ahead and just give you a nice little friendly reminder. While the game is very nice to give you 6 of every one of the dice from the 4-siders all the way up to the 12-siders, you're not limited by the dice in the game. Now, most likely you're not going to need more of those dice. I've yet to need more of those dice anytime I've played this game at all. But just understand that if for some reason you roll 7 dice of a kind, you can get some more dice from the side, or you can re-roll some of the missed dice. You're not limited by the dice in the box. It's one of the resources you're not limited by. There are some resources that you are limited by, such as your patrols and ambushes, and we'll cover those in a little bit. Just understand your dice you're not limited to, unless we're talking about the dice that allow us to do for our invasion. When it comes to the invasion dice specifically, you are limited to the 12 invasion dice that come in the box. You will never have more than 12 invasion dice, but the other dice that you can roll for your attacking, you're not limited to what's in the box. Also, one final thing when it comes to the bad guys, understand that there is no memory when it comes to attacking the bad guys. So if you hit a bad guy and you don't do enough damage to take him out, nothing's going to carry over. It's just a do or don't do kind of circumstance. You roll higher than their toughness on 1 single die, which does mean that some of the bad guys, such as Fiends, are impossible to kill if you're only rolling a 6-sider or a 4-sider, or if you're only rolling 1 die only. It doesn't matter even if you have a 12-sider. It's not enough to take out a Cacodemon because you need to have at least 2 dice to even do a chance to hit him at all. So you can't hit it with a 10-sider or roll 10 once, and then next round roll that die again to do the other point of damage because there's no memory. You either take him out or you don't. Next up, we have our control board. Now the control board is the main thing that's going to trigger how much the Lord advances, how quickly the despair pool is going to be raising up, and also our bonus courage, and it's also going to track our doom. Remember, when our doom goes to 13, we instantly lose the game. Now there's going to be a despair track, and this despair track is going to be tracked with this token, and the start of every single enemy phase is going to advance a certain amount of spaces based on the number of heroes in the game. So if we're playing a 2-hero game, it's going to advance 2 spaces. If we're playing a 3-hero game, it's going to advance 3 spaces at the start of every single enemy phase. The trick here is that this track is also very integral, and it's actually connected to the lore track. And how that's going to work is every time we reach or pass to level 1, the lore track is also going to advance 1 space. But that's not the only thing that's going to happen anytime we reach or pass the 1. Anytime this happens, if any of our heroes happen to have a pestilence token on them when we pass the 1, every hero is going to take 1 point of damage for every single pestilence token they happen to have on them. Additionally, we are also going to add 1 more die to the despair pool, which means instead of rolling 4 dice for the invasions, we're going to roll 5 dice. That's going to bring us to 6, 7, 8, all the way up until we have 12 despair dice in the despair pool, and that's the maximum amount of dice that can never be in the despair pool. And actually, technically, there can be 11 dice only in the despair pool because one of the heroes does have a special power that can permanently remove 1 of the despair dice from the game for that game only. Now, like I said, this despair track is going to continue to go around. It's going to continue to influence the lore track. Once the lore track advances all the way back down to 1, some bad things are going to happen, such as the Lord is going to advance, our gift track is going to reset, we're going to gain an extra special bad guy on the board, and a whole bunch of different other things are going to happen. I'll cover that when we talk about that specific part of the turn order on the enemy phase. But just understand that as the despair track circles, the lower track is going to circle, and as all that continues to happen, it's going to influence how things are going to happen on the game. Also know that the doom track is also going to be tracked here also. And the way we are going to gain doom is if any one of the bad guys, any of the demons, or I should say any of the minions, be very specific here, manages to exit the board, then they're going to raise the doom up by 1 point. There's one slight caveat to that though. If it's a 0 circle, first, second, or third circle demon, so we're going to raise the doom 1 point per minion that exits the board. If it happens to be a 4 circle demon though, it's going to raise the doom track by 4 points, which is going to allow us to start tracking this doom track very, very quickly and very, very powerfully. And remember, if we get to 13, we instantly lose the game. Now also understand there's 2 spots on the board that are a different color to give us a nice gentle reminder. At the start of the game during the setup, we always start with 1 legion in play. Once we reach level 3 or once we reach to level 7, we're going to change the current legion and we're going to randomly draw a new legion, replace the legion that's currently in play. And we'll keep our current legion that's in play right here. So understand that the only thing the doom track does is it affects the legions changing, and when a legion changes, all demons in play, I'll get this right eventually. All the demons in play are going to switch over to that new legion immediately. That means that if they were part of a different legion, but at the beginning of the round, it doesn't matter, all demons in play are immediately going to switch over to the next legion, which is going to change the powers they all have. And I guess technically I could say minions here because there's one specific legion that does affect the larva, the limbo larva. So it's very important to say that it can happen, but unless the card specifically says it, the legions are going to affect the demons only. So the doom track affects the legions changing, and it also affects one of the lost conditions for the game. The important thing to understand about the doom though is that there's a couple different ways to gain it, but there's really no way to get rid of doom. The basic ways you're going to gain doom is if any basic 0 circle all the way up to 3rd circle minion ever leaves the board, you gain 1 point of doom, unless a legion card is in play. This says otherwise. If any 4th circle demon leaves the board, you're going to gain 4 points of doom. And it's easy to remember this because that's the amount of courage those give. So any 0 to 3rd is going to give you 1 courage when they're defeated. Any 4 circles is going to give you 4 courage when they're defeated. Well, the amount of courage they give you is also the amount of doom they add to the doom track if they manage to exit the board. Additionally, you're also going to lose you're going to gain 2 points of doom if any of our heroes loses their lives. So again, there's no player elimination in this game. If you lose your hero, you're simply going to pick a new hero who's not currently in the game to replace your hero at the start of the next turn. So you're not out of the game, but dying is not a good thing because it does give 2 doom to the doom track. Remember, you only need 13 doom to lose the game. There's one other way to gain doom in this game though, and that's if you ever reveal an invasion token and you don't have enough miniatures to fulfill the requirements for that specific invasion token. And the max amount of doom you can ever gain is 1. So if you ever have a really bad roll on the invasion, it requires you to spawn a whole bunch of minions that you don't possess in the pool because they're all out on the board, you're still only going to gain 1 point of doom. But understand, anytime you cannot completely fulfill an invasion token, that's going to be 1 point of doom. So doom for invasion tokens, doom for minions, and doom for death, or I should say doom for minions like that, because that probably makes a lot more sense. That's how the doom track is. That's the control board. Let's go ahead and move on. There's really only one thing left to explain to you, and then we can go into setup and the turn structure, and you pretty much understand how to play the game on Planet Apocalypse. But the final thing to explain to you, and it's the most important thing to explain to you, is your hero sheet. Now at the start of the game, every single player needs to pick 1 hero. Now if you're playing this game solo, you are required to play with at least 2 heroes. I imagine it would potentially be possible to play the game with 1 hero, but the game is definitely not balanced around that aspect. It's definitely balanced for at least 2 heroes, so if you're going to play this game solo, you're required to play at least 2 heroes. Unless you want to go gung-ho, let me know in the comments down below how well it works for you. I haven't tried it out yet, but I'm sure it's going to be pretty darn difficult. So, your character sheet, every single hero is going to start with a character sheet. Now your character sheet is going to have a silhouette showing which miniature you're going to use. A little picture here, you're going to start with your starting power. Now this is the power that is always in play as long as you play this hero. As long as this hero is alive, they're going to have this hero power. And then you're going to have 2 powers that are going to be based on your skill trees. And you don't unlock those powers until you unlock them under your skill tree. I'll explain the skill tree in just a second. The final thing here is you're going to have your flaw. Now every single hero has a flaw. We're all flawed heroes. We're not perfect. We're the last survivors trying to stop this horrible demon invasion. So it's all upon us, and we're not perfect people, but we're going to do our best to save the world. So needless to say, every one of us has a flaw, and the flaw is always in play and is always going to hinder all of our heroes. The next thing we have is Every one of our heroes is going to start with a certain amount of toughness, and we'll track that with our toughness tokens. Just remember, you can never have more than 5 toughness tokens. And the next thing you're going to have is you're going to have your dice section that shows which kind of dice you roll in combat. You're always going to leave a little token out here to remind you how many dice or what kind of dice you roll. And as you level up your abilities, whether you're leveling up to the next die level, you're simply going to replace it. Or if you gain additional attack powers or additional attack dice, it's going to add additional dice. And again, you're going to keep 1 token for every die you're allowed to roll based on gifts, based on skills that you have, and that's going to show you how many dice you're going to roll every time you attack. Now your toughness is limited to 5. You can never have more than 5 points of toughness, which means the monster needs to roll 6 or higher to hit you. But your attack dice is not limited. You have a lot of attack dice, but do understand that no attack die can ever be upgraded past a D12. So you can't get a D20, D100, or I don't know if there's any higher D than that. But if there is, you can't have, and the biggest one you can have is a D12. So the next thing you're going to have is every single hero is going to start with a starting amount of luck. And this is where you're going to place your courage once you gain courage. Remember, you gain courage for defeating minions, 1 courage for anything 0 to 3rd circle, 4 courage if it's a 4th circle, and then finally if you defeat the final lord, well, you don't need to worry about the courage because you've won the game. Next thing up is we are going to have our skill tree. Now every one of these skill trees is going to have a start space, or if you're very unique like Sindru, you're going to have a lot of potential start places. So we'll go ahead and leave Sindru up just for a second to show you that she has multiple different start places, but most of your heroes are going to have 1 or maybe only 2 start places on their skill tree. And it's going to be signified on their skill tree right here, which signifies that that is the first skill you need to purchase. And then from there, once you purchase that skill, you can follow along, following the arrows, and get different skills by following those tracks. So for example, for John Dark, with the very first skill we gain, we can either start right here, or we can start right here. And anytime we gain a skill, we're going to gain the power of the gift we're putting on that skill slot, plus whatever text happens to be written right down here. And every one of these slots is going to have a cost in courage that you need to fill that slot. And the cost in courage is going to be a base cost plus, minus, or no difference on the cost of the gift itself. So for example, if we're playing John Dark and we wanted to buy the Wrath of God power, which is going to give us an extra D6 in our attacks, when we buy this, we can either put it here or here, and it's going to cost 4 courage plus the 4 courage for that slot. And the moment we do that, we're going to gain the bonuses of this gift and whatever that skill slot happens to be. So in this case, we would acquire the ability Dark Exchange. So we would simply put this check mark here to signify we have now unlocked that skill. We have now permanently unlocked that, and we will put this gift right here, and then we will gain that 1d6 attack from that Wrath of God ability. Now here's the really important thing to understand about gifts. Gifts are permanent. Once you put a gift down, it's there and it's stuck there until your hero dies. There is no way to remove a gift, no way to exchange gifts or do anything like that, at least not yet in the rules, or at least not in the base game, I should say. But just understand that once you buy a gift, understand it's a permanent cost or permanent purchase. It's going to have a cost down there, and the cost is going to be the combination of the location plus the gift itself. And then once you gain a gift, you need to follow the arrows to see which kind of gift you can buy next. So for example, if I purchase this gift, the next slot I can put a gift in is I can follow the arrows here, or I can pick the other start slot right there. Now if we go to a hero who only has 1 single start slot on their board, such as Naomi, who only has 1 single start slot on her board, we will see that really limits our options. If we start with Naomi, we would start right here, then we follow the arrow here or here, and then we can follow the arrows with our gifts. But remember, you have to follow those arrows on your gifts. That's the only way to level up your gifts. You have to follow the arrows, and once a gift is locked in, it's permanent. You can't replace it, you can't remove it, you can't exchange it. Once it's there, it's done. One final thing to show you is that every single hero is going to have a starting maximum health and a current health. You can never have more than 10 health, and you're going to simply put your max health token down right there on your starting max health. And then you can put your health tracker on top of that. Now understand, until you raise up your health by gaining gifts, you can never go beyond that basic. So as you take damage, you're going to go down this way. As you heal damage, you're going to heal up, but never heal past your maximum. But gifts may give you the ability to increase your maximum, so that is nice. But do understand that once your health, if your health ever reaches 0, your hero is defeated. He is removed from the game, and you must now select a new hero from any of the heroes not currently in the game to replace your hero, and they will enter the board at the start of the next round. And they're going to start the next round with a certain amount of courage based on the amount of despair dice in the despair pool, which means they do have the possibilities during the team phase to start buying upgrades immediately. Now that we've gone through all the crunchy bits, let's go ahead and show you exactly how to play Planet Apocalypse starting with a setup for the game. So I'm going to show you how to play the invasion map. Now the basic game does come with two maps. There's the invasion map, which we're showing right here, and then there is the Doomgate map. Now the Doomgate does have slightly different rules, and I don't want to make this video too darn long, and you want to play with the invasion map when you're learning how to play the game anyways. After that, pull out the rulebook, check out the differences between all the other maps, see what all the different maps for all the different expansions add in the game, and see if any of those maps are anything that are going to interest you. But let's go ahead and start showing you on how to play with the invasion map. So the very first thing we are going to do with the invasion map is we are going to start with our Lord in play. Now since I'm showing the basic game, there's only one Lord available, and we're going to simply put our Lord in play, and we're going to put them in play with one shadow token. Now generally speaking, you don't need to sweat the shadow tokens too much on the basic map. Basically what they do is, in effect, every shadow token in play is going to combine all areas into effectively one area when it goes into effect for attacking the boss. Basically speaking, if you enter any area that has a shadow token, you have effectively encountered the boss. It doesn't matter if the boss happens to be here. As they move up, they are going to keep placing out shadow tokens. So if for some strange reason I was able to enter the map from this side, such as on the Doomgate, since I've entered an area with a shadow token, I have now encountered the final boss, and I'm going to go into the Helltime fights. So basically speaking, you don't need to sweat the shadow tokens too much, but they are very important for some of the additional maps. So make sure you're adding them to the board, and make sure you keep adding them every time the Lord advances. The next thing we do is we need to put a health tracker on the Lord, and if we're playing with the basic game, this Lord does require two health trackers, one for his wall, one for his personal hit points. When you defeat the wall, he starts doing less damage, so you definitely want to defeat that wall as quick as possible as part of the strategies. But the amount of hit points the wall and the Lord is going to have is based on however many heroes are in play. If you have a 2-hero game, it's going to be 9 hit points, and his wall is going to have 3 hit points. If you have him play 5 players, that's going to be 18 and 6. Just very important to understand. You're going to be tracking his hit points because it's going to take multiple attacks to take out this Lord. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add one invasion token to every single section of the board except the hero's starting area. Now some maps are going to be a little different. Again, I'm showing you how to play the invasion map itself, but we're going to add one invasion token to the Lord starting area, and then area 1, 2, 3, and area 4. All the additional invasion tokens, you can go ahead and stick them back on the box. For this specific map, you're not going to need any additional invasion tokens. That's all you're going to need for this very specific map. Next up, we need to set up our control panel, and to set up the control panel, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to set a Doom to 0. We're going to put the Lord at number 1, and then we are going to put the despair track at number 1. After that, we are going to add 4 despair dice to the pool. The game always starts with 4 despair dice in the pool, and then we are going to add 4 courage to the courage pool. Now this is the community courage pool. There's a couple different ways that we're going to add courage into the community courage pool, but basically this is courage that's accessible to all of our heroes as long as a team captain approves of it. Now the reason why we have a team captain is to prevent alpha players from stealing all the courage and buffing up their own hero and not worrying about the fun of the other players. If you have a really good group of players who plays very well, you don't need to worry about it, but do understand that anytime you take courage from the community courage pool, it requires the approval of the team captain. So again, we're going to start with 4 courage in the courage pool, 4 despair dice. The other 8 despair dice will be placed off to the side, and understand they're going to be added into the game as the despair track starts cycling up as it's going through the game. Next thing we need to do is we need to shuffle the 4 Legion cards, and then we are going to put one of these Legions in play, and I just place them all down with one face up just because it's easier for me to do so. But once that Legion is in play, understand now that Legion affects all demons in the game. Not minions, all demons. All 1st through 4th circle now have that additional power beyond whatever powers they happen to have. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to shuffle up all the gift cards, and then we're going to add 10 gift cards to the starting gift pool. The nice thing about the gifts here in this game is that their game does have 10 gifts. It doesn't matter however many players you're playing in the game. There are going to be 10 gifts available in the pool, and this pool never refreshes until the Lord advances. And when the Lord advances, this whole pool, whatever cards have not been purchased, are going to be wiped, and we're going to draw 10 brand new gifts. So you can basically set the stack of gift cards off to the side. You're not going to need them until the Lord advances. And remember, when you buy a gift, you're not going to immediately replace it. This is not going to be refilled until the Lord advances, so don't sweat it at this time. Next up, we need to display the 5 troopers we're going to start with. Now, in some of the expansions, I should say all the expansions, they also offer regions. Regions are going to have modifications on the certain amount of patrols that we're going to have with us. In the base game, there's only the 5 basic patrols that go with us: the volunteers, the citizen militia, the police, the army, and the special forces. Understand these cards are double-sided. The front side is the patrol. The back side is the ambushes, and ambushes is the side we're going to place up when they're in locations. When they're traveling with our heroes, we're going to keep them with the volunteer side up. Next up, we need to set up our heroes. Now remember, all of our heroes are going to start with a basic starting luck. We're going to start with our starting toughness, our starting attack die. Make sure you look at what our special abilities, whatever it happens to be. Start with your max health and your current health tracker, and that's going to be placed off to the side. And then once you have your hero, you're simply going to add your hero to the board in the starting area for your heroes. Finally, we just need to pick whichever player is going to be the team captain, which means they are going to be the starting player for the very first round. And every single round, the team captain is going to switch to the next player in clockwise order. Additionally, if you lost the last game of Planet Apocalypse you played, the team captain is also going to start with the Divine Intervention token. Now, the interesting thing about the Divine Intervention token is it does not switch hands. It's going to stick with player one for the entire game until it's used, and it's a one-time use only. Once you use it, you're going to remove it from the game. And remember, you only start with that token in play if you lost your last game, or if you want to make the game a little bit easier, because it does give you a one-time boon. So what's that one-time boon you get from doing this? Well, you get to choose one of three things when you burn it. And again, you're going to use it one time and remove it from the game. The first thing you can do when you spend the Divine Intervention token is you use it to change the result of any invasion roll you just rolled. It's a good thing to use a little bit later in the game, or when you have that really bad Hail Mary play. But basically, once you roll the invasion dice, you can spend the Divine Intervention token, and then you set the invasion dice to any facing you want. You're not going to re-roll them. You're going to set them to the facing, hopefully setting them to a face that's much more better for your team's current position. The next optional thing you can do with your Divine Intervention token is if you do not like the current Legion card that is in play, you can discard it and replace it with the next one. Now remember, you have to take the next one. You're stuck with it. So make sure you're getting rid of a Legion that is really, really terrible. Now the base set only comes with 4 Legions, so it's pretty easy to know what the 4 of them are. And if you get the one that happens to be for burning, and you really don't want to start with burning, then maybe a good decision to get rid of it. Or if burning shows up later in the game when all of our heroes are really, really hurt, maybe that's a good time to get rid of it. But understand, that's the only one-time use for that Divine Intervention token. The final thing you can do with your Divine Intervention token is you can discard it when a 4th circle demon is summoned. And the only time a 4th circle demon is going to be summoned is when the Lord advances. And it doesn't cancel the summoning of the 4th circle demon, it just allows you to prevent that specific 4th circle demon from being summoned. So basically in the base game, if you are early in the game and the Hellhound appears, and it's the worst time to appear for the Hellhound, you can get rid of your Divine Intervention and make it the Catoblepus who's going to come out. Now the Hellhound is not removed from the game, just that one specific spawning of the 4th circle is going to be changed and modified a little bit in your favor. And again, once you use a Divine Intervention token, it's a one-time use. Pick one of those 3 things and then remove it from the game. And it always stays with the very first starting player. Even when the team captain rotates, the Divine Intervention stays with that very first player for the rest of the game until it's used. Now that you've set up the game, we're ready to start playing the game with the very first phase, which is the team phase. Now, every single round of Planet Apocalypse is broken down into 3 individual phases. And the phases are the team phase, the player phase, and then the enemy phase. Now, the team phase and the player phase is very nice because they're broken up into individual subsegments. And those subsegments you can actually do in any order you like, which can be very much part of your strategy. And that goes for the team phase. Each segment you can do in any order you like. And then the hero phase, you can do each individual segment in any order you like, as long as you're respecting the player order in the player phase. The enemy phase is very, very direct and has to be played out in a very specific order, but it's very quick and easy, and the process goes very, very quickly. So just understand, team phase, player phase is semi-mutable. The enemy phase is very much stuck in concrete, and you're going to follow the very specific phases in a very specific order. And it can be very, very important if the Lord ever advances on a location with a hero. So make sure you're following those instructions in a very specific order. So let's go ahead and cover the team phase really, really quick. The team phase is going to start off with the very first thing that's going to happen, except in the very first turn of the game. We don't do this in the first turn of the game, but the very first thing that's going to happen is the current team captain is going to switch to the next player in clockwise order. And that player, the player who currently has the current team leader token, is going to be the team leader for that specific round. They're the team leader for the entire round, and the team leader has a couple very important duties. The first thing that team captain is they are always the first player on every single turn. That means during the hell time, during the player phase, or I'm sorry, during the hero phase, they're always the one who activates first in every single turn. The next duty of the team captain is they can also judge the use of the courage pool. They can deny anybody access to the courage pool at any time. This can be used to break up arguments. This can be used to stop a player who's being a little bit greedy with the courage pool, or it can be done for anything else. But just understand that anytime you want to take courage from the courage pool, it requires the team captain's approval. The next duty of the team captain is the one that's not the best one at all, because the duty of the team captain decides which hero a group of minions is going to attack. Now, every time minions attack, they are going to attack as a solid group. Remember the lexicon I explained at the beginning of the game? Well, it's very important to understand the rules of the game, because the minions are going to attack as a solid group, and they're going to attack from the weakest group all the way up to the strongest group, which means the 0 circle minions will attack first, then second circle, third circle, fourth circle, and then finally, if you happen to be in the Helltime battle, the Lord is going to attack you, because it goes in order from weakest to strongest. But the way it's going to work is all of the minions of one group are going to attack at once. So if you happen to have 4 larvae, that means they're going to roll 4 attack dice. And before we roll those attack dice, it's the duty of the team captain to decide who that attack is going to be against. We need to make the decision before the attack roll is made, not after the attack roll is made, so it can influence our decisions, because we need to judge just the potential of a hero to take enough damage and hope it's not enough damage to take him out. So that's part of our decision as a team captain. And then the final duty of the team captain is they are in control of the ambushes. They get to decide who the targets of the ambushes are, and they also get to roll the dice for the ambushes. And we'll cover the ambushes in just a little bit, but just understand that's the final duty of the team captain. After the team captain has rotated the next player, this would be the time that if a player was eliminated on the prior round, this would be the time that they would pick a new hero and come into the game, and they're going to start the game with a certain amount of courage based on the total amount of dice in the despair pool, which means that a hero can basically start the team phase with up to 12 courage, which could be a bonus, and they can use that courage immediately to start making purchases from the gift pool. So when you come back in the game, this is a part you're going to come back in the game right after the team captain is switched, and again, you have access to some courage, and you can start spending it almost pretty much immediately. The unfortunate thing, though, is that when your prior hero dies, they lose all their gifts, all their bonuses, and everything is going to go to the discard pile. So the new hero, when they enter the game with 0 gifts, 0 bonuses. They're going to start with a basic starting luck and the amount of courage based on the amount of dice in the despair pool. So they're going to start with not a lot of stuff. So you don't want to die, because remember, it racks up that doom track, and it also makes our heroes weak, because if you die in the late game, coming into the game is going to make you pretty darn weak and pretty much behind the curveball, meaning you're ever so much closer to suffering ultimate defeat at the hands of the Lord. After the new hero comes into the game, we now move to the part of the team phase that is actually broken down into subsegments. And like I said earlier, these subsegments can be played out in any order, so it behooves you to play these subsegments out in the way that's the most advantageous to all of our heroes. And you can move around, use special abilities, and do these subsegments in any order. So be smart with your play of these subsegments. But the very first subsegment you have access to is going to be the recruit action. Now, you can only do the recruit action if your hero specifically is currently in the starting area. And the way you're going to do the recruit action is you're simply going to roll a 4-sided die. And those are some bonus free starting bonus recruit points that you're going to start with that do not carry over to the next round. So you're going to spend them or you're going to lose them. Once you figure out how many recruit points you're going to start with, you can spend additional courage to add into your recruitment pool, and you can spend that courage from the community pool as long as the captain approves it, or you can spend your own personal courage. Now, what are you going to spend these courage and these recruitment points on? Well, you're going to spend these on recruiting volunteers, citizens, police, army, and special forces. Basically, the patrols are going to go on patrol with you. And the cost of every single one of these is listed on their cards. The volunteers are 1, the citizen are 2, the police are 3, the army is 4, and then finally the special forces happen to be 5. Now, there's a couple different caveats to hiring patrols to go with you. Some of your heroes have restrictions that only allow them to hire 1 patrol. There's also a limited supply of these, and once you use up a complete supply of these, you can't gain any extras. You're not going to use any pieces of paper to represent that you have extra volunteers or anything like that. You're limited to the supply with the game, which means in a 5-player game, these are a very, very strong commodity, which is very, very much something that players are going to have to fight over, because remember, this is a cooperative game. But understand that the patrols, you can never carry with you a patrol of different types. The patrols cannot intermingle. So that means that I cannot take 1 volunteer and then 1 citizen militia on patrol with my hero. I'm either going to take citizen militia or I'm going to take volunteers with me. The good news, though, is that if I have a volunteer with me, and then if I get a really good recruitment roll and I have a couple courage to spend with me, I can actually purchase an army, get rid of that volunteer, send them back to the available pool for the rest of the players, and replace it with my army, which is a better thing to have on patrol with me. Now, the nice thing about these patrols is they do have a statistic on the front, and that's the amount of damage that they can soak up for us. Now, they only have 1 hit point effectively, but they can soak up extra damage, which is a very important distinction, which means that if I assign 1 point of damage to the patrol, this patrol card is defeated and they're going to go back to the draw pile here. But they can soak up to 2 points of damage, which can be very important, especially when we run into things like the Catoblepus, which can give us negative status effects if we take at least 1 point of damage. So they can soak up to this number right here, but they still die even if they get 1 point of damage assigned to them. The only other thing to understand about the patrols, though, is that you can never have more than 4 patrol cards with you at a time, and again, they all have to be of the same type. So that means things such as the Special Forces, there's only 4 of these Special Forces cards in the whole entire game, and if one player has all 4 of them, they can't carry anymore and nobody else has access to them. But when you have things such as the Volunteers, where there happens to be 8 of them in the game, you can't carry all 8 of them with you. You can only have up to 4 of them with you at a time. And again, if you are ever at the starting area and if you get a good recruitment roll and you have lower level Volunteers, you get a good recruitment roll, you can put them back in the discard pile for other players to purchase and purchase better Volunteers to go along with you on patrol. The next action you can do in the subsegment here is you can do the action of First Aid. Now, First Aid is very nice. You can perform First Aid on yourself, or you can perform First Aid on another hero. Now, if you are in a location with no other minions, doing the First Aid action is free, but each hero can only perform it once, whether it's on themselves or another hero. But you can also use First Aid to remove Pestilence tokens. You remove Pestilence tokens at a 1-for-1 basis. So when you do the First Aid action, it gives you 1 point of healing unless you have a gift that makes your First Aid more powerful. And as your First Aid gets more powerful, you can do combinations of healing of Pestilence and of hit points, but you get a total healing power and you can use that to heal either yourself or other heroes. But just remember, there are some heroes that cannot use First Aid on themselves, so it's a very important flaw for some of our heroes. But the basic idea of using First Aid is you're going to heal as much as you can based on any gifts you have, and you can heal either hit points up to a player's current maximum, or you can get rid of Pestilence tokens, again up to the total amount of healing, or any combination of both of them. The only caveat to that, though, is if there happens to be a minion in your current area and you attempt to do First Aid, it is going to cost you 1 courage point. And that can be from the community pool, or that can be a personal point of courage. And that's going to happen every single time that somebody wants to do First Aid. So that means that if both of our heroes want to do First Aid, in this example, it's going to be 2 points of courage, 1 point for every First Aid attempt, just because there's 1 minion in the location. Now, it's not 1 courage per minion, it's just 1 courage if at least 1 minion happens to be in the location. The next thing you can do in the team phase is you can purchase gifts. Now, you can pick from any one of the current 10 available gifts that happen to be on the gift board, and you're simply going to pay the cost of the location you want to put it on, plus any cost on the current gift. And if you can play that cost in total courage based on personal courage or courage in the community pool, you will simply take that gift and put that on top of your hero. So, for example, if I want to purchase Wrath of God for Naomi right here, this slot has a basic cost of 4 courage. Wrath of God has an additional 4 points of courage cost. So to purchase this card and add it onto my slot right here is going to cost me a total of 8 courage. The moment you buy that gift, it's a permanent and it's permanently locked in. You cannot get rid of it until that hero dies. And you're going to gain any benefits of the gift card and any benefits of the location you just covered. And those benefits are going to come in immediately. So understand, you're going to get those benefits immediately from the gift and from the location itself, as long as you pay the total courage cost. Now, the good news here is that if you have lots of courage saved up, you can purchase multiple gifts at a time, and our heroes can purchase multiple gifts among themselves. But just remember, this gift board is not going to refill until the Lord advances. So as you're playing the game until the Lord advances, these gifts are going to start depleting. And also understand that when the Lord advances, this entire board is going to be wiped out. So make sure you're buying gifts that you really want before the Lord advances and the gift board gets wiped out and you lose a potential gift that you really, really needed. Now, there's 2 other things you can do during the team phase. One of them is any special powers our heroes happen to be. For example, Naomi has the special power Nimble, which works during the team phase. And Terang has a special ability of Prayer, which allows them to heal during the team phase. So some of our heroes do have special powers they can use during the team phase. But there's one power that's available to all our heroes, and that's if our heroes as a community can go together and spend a total of 9 courage, they can buy 4 luck. And then they can assign that luck however they want among our heroes. Now, luck is very, very important because some of these gifts, especially the very powerful gifts, require us to spend luck to use their abilities. So understand that luck is a very powerful resource, and luck can be spent as courage, but courage can't be spent as luck. So luck is a very tight commodity. You can get more of it by spending lots of courage, and luck does have lots of uses by using gifts or by spending it as courage as a last-ditch effort. But understand you really don't want to be doing that because it costs 9 courage just to get 4 luck to spread among our heroes. After the team phase is over, we're going to move on to the hero phase, and the hero phase again is broken down into 3 subsegments, and we are going to perform the hero phase in player order. Each single player, starting with the team captain, is going to complete their entire hero phase, and then once their hero phase is over, the next player gets to take their hero phase, and we're going to go on and on until all the players have taken 1 hero phase, and then we're going to move on to the enemy phase. Now during the hero phase, there's 3 actions available to every one of our heroes. Again, do these in any order. The actions are move, the action is to attack, and the action is to set an ambush. Now to move, you can move any 1 or 2 spaces, but they have to be in one continual direction. So for example, I can't be at this location right here. Yes, ignore the fact that invasion token can't be there because there's a hero there. I'll explain invasion tokens just a little bit. But I can't move 1 space here and then move 1 space back. If I'm going to move 2 spaces, I need to move 2 spaces in a continuous line. I can't go backwards and forwards. It's very important about the movement. Also understand that movement cannot be interrupted by attacking. So I couldn't move here, spawn this invasion token, attack that evasion token, and then continue my move. Once I stop moving to do a fight action, my turn is over. That's not the case for ambushes though. You can drop ambushes as you go, which is very, very nice. So I could move 1 space, drop an ambush here, and then finish my movement here, and then do an attack action right here. So again, you can mix things up, which is very, very nice. Now understand that when you move, if you move into a space with an invasion token, even if you don't plan to stop in that space, that invasion token is going to reveal. Now the way we reveal invasion tokens is it's going to happen anytime an invasion token happens to occupy the same space as a hero or the same space as an ambush. As soon as that happens, we are immediately going to remove that invasion token from the board, and we're going to find out how many creatures are going to be represented by that specific invasion token. Now, I think I just remembered to cover one thing when I was talking about the Doom track earlier, and it's very, very important to explain this because this is something that can actually happen, not in this specific map right here, but it can happen in a later map. So I want to make sure I at least include this rule so nobody makes this mistake. If an invasion token ever manages to leave the board, I guess it could actually happen on this map too, but it's going to be very, very rare. But if an invasion token ever manages to leave the board, it's going to increase the Doom track based on the total amount of current despair dice in the despair pool. So 1 invasion token leaving the board can add 4 despair or Doom to the Doom track, but if we're at the later game, we're rolling 12 despair dice. If one of these invasion tokens gets off the board, that's going to be 12 Doom. So make sure those invasion tokens never leave the board. But back on topic here. If a hero or an ambush happens to ever occupy the same space as invasion token, we will immediately remove the invasion token from the board, and we will roll all the despair dice that are currently in the despair pool, and that's going to decide however many bad guys are going to spawn on the board. And the way this is going to work is we are going to be looking for match sets. Now there's 3 different kinds of match sets, and I'm going to add some extra dice in here just to show you all the 3 different match sets and how they work. But basically the match sets we have is we have a match set for a circle 1 demon, and you know that's a circle 1 because there's 1 dot on the top. There's a match set for circle 2 demons because there's 2 dots right there. And there's a match set for a circle 3 demon. For every complete match we get, so for example, if we had this right here, we would have 1 match and 1 match, but these don't match at all. But for every complete match we have, we are going to add 1 demon from that circle, plus 1 larva minion is going to join that minion. And that's going to happen even if there is no minions to represent that die because we don't have enough in our pool of available ones. Every single match is always going to spawn a larva if there's larva available, and each match is also going to spawn its represented demon as long as you have it available in your pool. So in this example right here, I would spawn 1 circle 1 demon with a larva, and that would handle this spawning die. For these match right here, I spawn 1 circle 2, which is a fiend, which will come with 1 larva. And then this match set right here would spawn 1 circle 3 demon, which will be the Keiko demon, which will come with 1 larva with it. So that's what's going to happen during the spawn, so that's very, very important. And remember, that's going to happen for every invasion token we happen to enter the same area with. So the same thing here, if I continue my move and go to that location with the invasion token, let's bring it back to the early stages where I'm going to roll 4 dice here. I'm going to roll the 4 dice, and we see that we would gain 2 circle 1s, and they would bring 2 little larva minions with them. So that's how the movement is done in this game. Remember, you have to go in one continuous line. You can either move one space or two space, and you cannot interrupt your movement to do an attack, but you can interrupt your movement to drop an ambush. And I'll explain ambushes after we explain fighting, because fighting is the next very important thing that we are going to do. Now, the way fighting works in this game, I've already pretty much explained it to you, so I'm just going to gloss over this very, very quickly. But you're going to roll the total amount of attack dice you have in your pool, and you're going to compare that to a toughness of a target in your current area. Now, the nice thing about the heroes attacking the bad guys is you can assign your attack dice after your rolls, whereas opposed where the bad guys, when they attack the heroes, we're going to assign the victim of the attack before we see the roll. And the way this is simply going to work is if we happen to have this hero right here, which happens to be Hannah Hazard, she currently has a 1d6 attack die. We're simply going to roll that 1d6 attack die, and then we get to assign after we roll it. And we're going to compare it to the toughness against anything we want to attack in the square. Now, this creature has a toughness of 4. This creature has a toughness of 1. So this means I can pick one of those creatures and defeat them. Let's say I happen to roll a 4 on this roll instead of getting that nice roll of a 6. Since this has a toughness of 4 and this has a toughness of 4, I cannot assign the kill to them, so I can assign the kill to one of the larvae. But let's say I rolled a 1, which is not enough damage to do damage to any of them. That means my attack is effectively wasted. And we're going to roll all of our attack dice at once. So if we happen to have multiple attack dice available to us, because we managed to level up just a little bit, we would roll all these dice at the same time, and then after we roll the dice, we're going to assign the hits. So simply roll the dice and then assign the hits. We have a 6, a 4, a 3, and a 6, or a 2. So we would assign the 6 to take this guy out. We could assign the 3 to take this guy out. We could assign the 4 to take this guy out, and this 2 is basically wasted because it's not good enough to take out this guy. That's basically how combat works. We're going to roll our attack dice, sign it after we see whatever our results are, and any special powers we may have, such as the fact that Hannah can attack spaces next to her. And then after we decide all of our attacks, that's basically how fighting is done for our heroes. The last thing to do is explain how ambushes work. Now, if you have any units patrolling with you, and they have to be patrolling with you already, you can't purchase them when you're in a location. But if you happen to have any units patrolling with you, you can drop as many of those units as you want in the location. And then when you do, just make sure you place them face up, which turns them into ambushes. Now, the good news is this means they're going to attack any bad guys who enter the area. The bad news is that these guys are not going to be traveling with you to take damage. Now, they can soak up damage if they happen to be in the same space with you, but if I happen to move on, I cannot use those guys to soak up anymore for me. Now, when you place an ambush out, much like carrying patrols with you, all ambushes in a specific section have to all be matching. So if I place an army there, the only kind of ambushes I can have there are armies, and you can have up to 4 cards in a location as an ambush, and you can't place multiple ambushes in the same location. So again, I can't do an army and then do a volunteer and then do something like a citizen militia. I need to pick one of those, and that's going to be the kind of ambush I'm going to have in the location. Now, the nice thing about ambushes, though, is that they are pretty much permanent. The only way they're going to be removed from the game is if the Lord Shadow ever enters the location with an ambush, or if we decide to replace the ambush with a more powerful ambush or a different kind of ambush because we need those cards back. So, for example, if Hannah enters this area and she happens to have 1 volunteer, I could place that volunteer down. This is a dumb idea, but just to show you how the game plays, I could place that volunteer down to remove this ambush and put this ambush back in the available pile of cards to purchase for the other players. Now, it's not necessarily a terrible idea because remember, we're limited on the amount of cards here. And let's say somebody needs a more powerful card really, really badly to protect them. Well, we can make that happen by putting a weaker ambush out here or whatever we want to do. Just remember, maximum 4 ambush cards on location. They all have to match the exact same kind. And again, you can drop ambushes as you're moving, but you can't interrupt movement with fighting. That's pretty much the entire hero phase. We're simply going to do those actions, and then once we're done, the next player in order is going to go. Once all of our heroes have completed their hero phase, we get to move on to the enemy phase. Before we move on to the enemy phase, though, there's a couple little other things to explain, and that is going to be status effects, and that's also going to be the concept of assisting, because things are never as bleak as they seem because we can start assisting our other heroes. So let's go ahead and cover the status effects really, really quick. If one of your heroes is ever stunned, and you're simply going to represent that by taking a stun marker underneath your hero if you like, or you can put the stun marker on your board, whatever is more convenient for you. But if your hero is ever stunned, the only way you can get rid of the stun is to either sacrifice your movement or sacrifice your attack. You have to sacrifice one or the other. You don't have an option. You must pick one and sacrifice, and that will remove the stun token. The good news is you can never have more than 1 stun token. The bad news is you're going to lose half of your actions. The other thing that you can have on top of your hero is you can have a fire token. Now fire is very, very nasty, because if you have a fire token on your hero, you're going to take 1 point of damage at the start of your turn before you can do anything, which means you can't even remove the fire token from yourself. But fire tokens can be removed. You can remove a fire token from yourself or remove a fire token from another hero in your current location. And the simple way you're going to remove a fire token is by sacrificing your attack action. So that's the important thing to understand. To remove a stun token, you're going to give up your own personal attack or movement. To get rid of a fire token on anybody in your current area, you just need to sacrifice your attack to get rid of the fire token. Now, if you happen to be alone in your area and you happen to be on fire, that does mean that the fire is going to do a point of damage before you get any actions. And then you can sacrifice your attack to put yourself out by stopping, dropping, and rolling. And then you could move and run away to go back and heal whatever you want to do. But that's the interesting thing about that. Now, the final status effect is the pestilence tokens. I explained how to heal those during first aid. The only way to get rid of pestilence tokens is by using the first aid or healing skill. And remember, pestilence tokens are going to do damage once the despair track advances. And I'll explain that when we get to the despair track. Don't get ahead of ourselves. There's one other thing to explain, and that's the concept of assisting. So the way heroes are going to assist, and let's go ahead and bring a couple extra heroes into this fight just to show you how assisting works in this game. Let's say that it's currently Hannah Hazard's turn and it's her turn to go, and she happens to be in the space. She can look at any other heroes, and against any of the other heroes, you can never assist yourself, and ask any of them if they want to assist her with the attack. Generally speaking, the way this would work, if we are starting this to show you how this is going to work, let's say Hannah has 3d6 and a d10 for her attack. For every hero that assists her, that hero must spend 1 courage. Again, it can be personal courage or courage from the community pool, but for every hero assist, they're going to spend 1 courage. And every time a hero assists Hannah, she can raise any one of the dice in her current rolling dice pool by 1 step. And she can put all the courage assistance into 1 dice, or she can spread out among all the dice. So let's say Hannah's right here, and let's say all 3 of her heroes are going to assist, and all 3 of them are going to spend their courage to help her out. So now we have 3 dice raises to go here. We could spend one of our dice raises to spend this d10 into a d12, and then we spend our other 2 dice raises to turn this 4. It's going to bypass the 8, and it's going to go all the way to a d10. So by spending 3 courage, we've managed to assist ourselves. And then for our attack, now that we've had the assist, we'll now roll our attack dice, and maybe we'll get a better result. And hey, look at that. With all that assistance, we managed to take care of all 4 of these guys. And remember, when bad guys die, we gain courage. So we spent 3 courage to gain 4 courage. So that would have actually worked out for ourselves. Except that since Hannah performed the kill, she gets the courage herself. When ambushes kill bad guys, it goes to the community courage pool. But I'll explain that when we get to that point. And now we get to the dreaded enemy phase. Now this enemy phase, unlike the hero phase and the team phase, is set in stone. It has to be performed in a very, very specific order. And that order can matter, especially when we have the fact when the Lord is going to start advancing. So make sure you follow this order very, very specifically. The very first thing that's going to happen during the enemy phase is the despair track is going to advance. And it's going to advance an amount of spaces based on the amount of heroes in the game. So if we're playing a 2-hero game, it's simply going to advance 2 spaces. If we're playing a 4-hero game, it's going to advance 4 spaces. And every time the despair track manages to make a complete circle by either landing on the 1 or passing the 1, a couple different things are going to happen. The very first thing that's going to happen is anytime the despair track does a full complete circle, any heroes who have any pestilence tokens on them are going to take 1 point of damage for every single pestilence token on that hero. Which means that if you've managed to fight the Catoblepus a couple times, you have a couple pestilence tokens stacked up on our hero, that can be very damaging and can potentially kill one of our heroes. So make sure you're keeping control of those pestilence tokens. The next thing that's going to happen is that we're going to add 1 despair die to the current pool of despair dice that we're going to be rolling every single time we spawn an invasion. And that, again, that's going to happen every time this completely circles. The next thing that's going to happen is that we are going to add 4 courage to the pool every time the despair track does a complete circle. We are going to add an additional 4 courage to the track, or to the community courage pool right here. And then the final thing that is going to happen every time this track does a complete circle is the Lord track is going to advance 1 step. Now, if the Lord track ever advances back to number 1, something is going to happen and the Lord is going to advance. I'm going to go ahead and cover this really quick. Just understand this is going to take a while to happen. So for example, we're playing a 4-player game. We'd advance 1, 2, 3, 4. Next round we'd advance 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this would advance, die, everything else would happen. Then it's going to advance 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is going to advance. So it's going to take a while for that lore track to completely advance, but understand that as the despair track is going up, we're going to be adding despair dice, and we're going to be gaining courage, and we're possibly going to be taking pestilence damage. Now, if the lore track ever gets back to number 1, we have to do a series of steps, and we need to follow these steps very specifically in the very specific order. This is one of those times that this is really going to matter, especially if the lord happens to land on an area with a hero, because we're going to have one of these circle 4 demons also joining the fight. So make sure you're following the steps very, very specifically. But the first thing that's going to happen is when we advance the track back to number 1 on the lore track, is we are going to discard all the current gifts on the gift board. These are all going to be removed from the game. Well, not really removed from the game. They're going to be put in a discard pile. I've never managed to go through the entire gift deck. I guess, actually, I don't even think it's even possible. So I'm not even going to worry about it. I don't think it's even possible. But these are pretty much going to be put off to the side in a discard pile. And then we're going to draw 10 brand new gifts and fill out the gift board for our heroes. Those are going to be the gifts available for our heroes to buy. The next thing that's going to happen is the Lord is going to advance 1 space. Now, unless the map says otherwise, this is generally what's going to happen is the Lord's going to advance 1 space, and we're going to add 1 shadow token onto the new space he's entered. Now, this does mean that this whole area is now a portal to hell, which can be very important for some of the later maps. Or for the Doom Gate, which is on the opposite side and comes with the basic box right here. Now remember, the Lord advancing is one of the possible loss conditions for the game, so if the Lord ever advances and enters a starting arrow for our heroes have instantly lost the game. It's not the Lord exiting the map. Once they immediately enter the start arrow, our heroes have immediately lost the game. So make sure you're stopping the Lord before he makes it to the start area. The shadow tokens are also very important because the shadow tokens are also going to destroy ambushes. Anytime a shadow token is added to the same location that ambush happens to be in, all the ambushing cards in that specific location are going to be removed from the board and then we put back in the draw pile. So if the Lord happens to enter this area with these special forces, they are going to be removed from the board. That ambush has been permanently removed from that location, and we cannot put ambushes in these locations anymore because they can't take ambushes at all. So the Lord's advancement is going to affect how we're placing ambushes. So make sure we're placing ambushes smartly. You probably don't want to put an ambush right in front of the Lord's area, especially if he's about ready to advance, because you're basically going to lose the ambush anyways. So don't waste the cards or the recruitment or the courage. And the final thing to understand about the shadow tokens is, like I said, it treats all areas as one solid area. So again, this is very specific, and this is something that's actually been updated in the rules. So if you're following along with the rule book, understand this may sound what's different from what's in the rule book, but understand all these areas are now effectively a big giant portal to hell, which means that if we happen to have miniatures all on these different areas like this, we have bad guys out here, somehow just to demonstrate what's going on here, if we have all these bad guys out here, this is one solid portal to hell, which means if our heroes enter from this side on a different map, all of these miniatures are going to enter the fight with the Lord against our hero. If our hero enters from this side, all these miniatures are going to join in on the fight because this is effectively one big portal to hell. So if our heroes go in, they have to fight all these miniatures. But the important thing to understand is that these miniatures in their individual areas are still going to advance one area at a time, which means that these individual miniatures are still going to advance like this, and this would spawn normally and we'd roll the dice. These bad guys would advance like this, and then these bad guys would advance just like that. Even though it's one big giant portal to hell with the shadow tokens right here, understand we're still going to advance each individual section, but if a hero enters an area, they're going to fight all of these bad guys under the shadow itself. Finally, after the Lord advances and after we place that shadow token out, now we're going to spawn a 4th circle demon. Now the way we're going to spawn a 4th circle demon is we are randomly going to pick whichever one's going to be out of the board. You can do it through the roll of a dice, or when you get a couple different expansions, you can shuffle up all the 4 circle minion cards, shuffle them all up, flip one over and pick out whatever one's going to be out of the board. But you're simply going to add that to the board at the same location as the Lord, wherever his space he has moved into. After that is done, and again, we have to follow this very specific order. It's very important to follow this order, because if the Lord ever advances onto a space, let's go ahead and get rid of that, with a hero, we're going to follow that entire process like I just showed, but that 4th circle is going to join in the fight. So if we ever did this entire process, let's say we moved in here, we would add the shadow token, the ambush token would be removed from, or the ambush would be removed from that location, then we would spawn. This ambush token right here would be resolved by figuring out whatever's going to be added into that location. And then we are now going to fight the Lord, and the Lord is going to drag all the heroes in this current location. They're all going to enter the hell time. I'll explain the hell time in a little bit. Just understand that all heroes in the location that the Lord moves into are all sucked into the hell time. They don't have a choice, but heroes outside that location do have the option to join into the fight. I'll explain all that in just a little bit. Now I'll go ahead and pull the Lord back just so I explain to you what would happen after this part of the phase where the Lord advances. Let's say the Lord advances, we did all those actions and the Lord didn't move into a current location with a hero. We're now done with the Lord advancing phase. Now we get to move on to the minions attacking. Now the way the minions are going to attack is the minions are going to attack any heroes in their current location. And the easiest way to do this is just to start with the front of the board and move all the way back. But you can pick these fights in any order you want, and it might be important to your decisions because you want to see how somebody survives a fight before you decide who is fought next. But basically, we are going to pick a section of the board and we deal with the attacks in that section. And the way that's going to happen is the first thing that's going to happen is the lowest weakness minion in that specific location gets to attack first, and they're all going to be grouped up as a total group. So let's go ahead and pick this location right here, and let's say this hero happened to be in this location. So the first thing that's going to happen is the team captain is going to pick out which one of these heroes is going to be attacked first, and we're going to start with the weakest heroes. These are the lowest heroes right there, and they all roll 1d6 when they attack. So we're going to roll 3d6 for the attack, but first we need to figure out which hero is going to be attacked. After we figure out which hero is going to be attacked, we're going to roll all those dice, and for every die that is greater than that hero's toughness is going to be 1 point of damage. So in this case, that hero would have suffered 2 points of damage. After that's completed, we're going to move up to the next more powerful demon in player order, or in circle order, which in this case is going to be a circle 1 demon. And then, before that demon attacks, the team captain is going to pick who that demon is going to attack. We're going to roll the dice, and we're going to see if that hero is going to take damage. Next up, we do that with the Fiend, and then next up, we would do that with the Keiko Daemon. And remember, the Keiko Daemon is nasty. He rolls 3 dice, which means he'd be very, very nasty to our heroes. Once we've figured out all the attacks in a specific location, and we've handled all the attacks in all the locations, handled any possible deaths or anything like that, we are now done with the minions attacking, and now we get to go on with the minions movement. Don't forget though, when it comes to minions attacking our heroes, don't forget that we can use our patrols to soak, and we can also use our ambushes to soak. And again, don't forget that even though ambushes are down in a location and they're not traveling with our specific heroes, they can still be used to soak. And when they use to soak up damage, they are simply going to be removed from the space, and then we have to place ambushes back to replace those ambushes. The good news though is that if we use all our ambushes and all our patrols to soak up all the damage, and none of the damage applies to our heroes, that means any special abilities such as pestilence or fire are not going to be applied to our heroes. Pestilence and fire is only going to affect our heroes if they take at least 1 point of damage. So if they happen to have patrols going with them, and if there happens to be enough ambushes in a location to soak up all the damage, we can avoid fire damage and we can avoid pestilence. But remember, when they soak up the damage, they die. So make sure you're sacrificing ambushes when you really need to, and not avoiding damage when you should be taking it, because it's really hard to get those ambushes back on the board. After we resolved all the attacks, again, it's time for all of our bad guys to advance. And our bad guys are going to advance. We're going to start with the front of the board, and we're going to move all the way towards the back of the board. And we're basically going to take all the minions from a certain area, and we're simply just going to advance them to the next area. Basically, as a long chain, the Lord does not advance. He only advances when the Lord track tells him to. But all these minions are going to advance, and the minion tokens are also, or I'm sorry, the invasion tokens are also going to advance also. Once we've resolved moving up all of the minions and all the invasion tokens, if there happens to be an invasion token on any area that happens to have at least 1 ambush card or at least 1 hero, that invasion is going to immediately resolve, and we're going to roll all the current despair dice, figure out which kind of minions are going to be added to that location. Remember, this would be 1 circle 1, 1 circle 2, and 2 larvae will be added into that location. That's very simply how the movement is done. But don't forget though, for every minion that manages to exit the board, we are going to gain 1 doom for every single minion. So in a really bad case, that would be 6 doom for our doom track. And don't forget the circle 4 guys, if they manage to leave the board, they are going to add 4 doom to the doom track. So if all 7 of these guys manage to leave the board, that would be 10 doom for our heroes, which is probably meaning that our heroes are very, very close to losing the game. Next thing that's going to happen is an invasion token is going to spawn in the same location where the Lord is. Although, again, this is one of the modified rules, you can never put an invasion token in the same location where a Lord is. So if there happens to be at least 1 invasion token in the Lord's current space, we are not going to spawn an invasion token. But if there happens to be no invasion tokens there, we are going to spawn 1 invasion token in the Lord space. And then finally, after all this is done, we are going to trigger all of our ambushes. Now the way an ambush is going to work is the ambush is going to act like a hero attacking anything in its current location. And we're going to roll a certain amount of dice based on the total size of our ambush. So for example, if we have 3 volunteers right here, we'd see that we're going to roll 1d8. If you start looking at some of the more powerful ambushes, or I should say the more variable ambushes, For example, if we happen to have 4 citizen militia in this location, that's how many dice we're going to roll. And we're simply going to roll those dice and apply those just as if a hero would attack those minions. So for example, in this case, the citizen militia would allow us to roll 3d6. We'd roll 3d6 in this location, and then we apply any hits. Well, none of this is going to affect the fiend, but that's definitely going to take out that larva. And for every single kill scored by an ambush, we are going to gain 1 courage in the community courage pool. So that's how the community courage pool is going to start filling up, is by our ambushes taking out some of these bad guys. So in this location right here, we are going to simply roll only a 1d8. I guess those volunteers just aren't as great as we thought they are. They're better just for soaking up damage. So we will roll and we will apply that result. So we could take this guy out, and again, that would gain us 1 point of courage for the community courage pool. That's the complete round for the game. After we've done that, we're simply going to cycle all the way back to the team phase, where we're going to move the team captain, do all the actions for the team phase, go to the hero phase, do all the hero actions for the hero phase, go back to the enemy phase, and we're going to keep repeating this over and over and over again until our heroes manage to win or our heroes manage to lose. The only thing left to explain to you is explain how to do hell time. Now, hell time is what is going to happen anytime a hero enters any one of the shadow locations. And again, that's very important for some of the future maps. In this basic map, not quite as important, but in some of the future maps, if any hero enters the same location as a shadow token, they are going to start hell time. This also means that if a lord enters the area with a hero, it's also going to start the hell time. And the way hell time is going to work is we are going to use the hell time board right here. And it's very important to, well, it's not super important to use this board, but for thematic effects, it's very, very nice to use it. But let's go ahead and show you exactly how the hell time board works. When a hero enters hell time, we are basically going to take all the miniatures that are currently under the shadow, and they are going to be added to the hell time board. But before we do any of those things, the first thing I need to explain to you is that the hero who activates hell time, which is basically the hero who goes into the shadow, is going to be placed on the activating hero space. Now, this is very important because the hell time lord battle is a separate segment of the game. It actually interrupts the game, and the rest of the flow of the game completely stops. We're not going to have a team phase anymore. We're not going to have a hero phase anymore. We're not going to have an enemy phase anymore. And that's very important, especially when it comes to powers such as prayer. We can't use prayer while we're in the hell time because there is no team phase anymore. Once we have entered the shadow, we need to start making decisions. The very first thing we need to do is when we enter the shadow as a hero is whoever starts is going to start in the activating hero space. And then they need to ask any of the other players on the board. Does not matter where they are on the board. They don't have to be in any of the shadows if they want to join in on the fight. And if they want to join in on the fight, we simply add those heroes onto the board also. Now, it's very important to keep the hero who activated right here, because once we exit hell time, the turn structure is going to return exactly where it was before the hell time started, but it's going to start right after the turn of the player who activated the hell time, which means if in player order, if this player still hasn't gone on the turn, once we exit hell time, they're still going to get their full hero phase, which is very, very important. So back on task, what is going to happen here? All of the minions that happen to be under the Lord's shadow are going to join in on this fight, which is why it's very important to make sure you're watching however many minions are under the Lord's shadow, because they all join in on this grand fight, which makes it very, very challenging. So once we have all the minions that are going to be part of this fight and we figured out everything that's going to happen, next thing we need to do is we need to look at the Lord, because every single Lord is going to have a special power under their menace. Their menace is going to activate the minute the battle starts with the Lord, and it's going to be a one-time effect. It's not going to happen every single round, but it's going to be a one-time effect, and it's going to activate. Do what it says on the card. Specifically for this bad guy right here, what he's going to do is he's going to attack one of the heroes immediately, and then he's going to attack during the enemy phase, which is going to happen very, very shortly. But basically what's going to happen is after the menace goes off, our heroes in full player order, starting all over again with the team captain, need to start making one of two actions, and once we decide what action we're going to do, it's going to go on to the next player. And the actions we can choose to do is we can choose to attack, or we can choose to flee. If we choose to attack, we're going to roll any of our attack dice, and we're going to apply any of our attack dice just like a normal fight. We're going to apply them towards the Lord, towards the minions, however we want to do it, again, just like a normal fight. If we choose to retreat, we are immediately going to leave the fight, and we can go to any currently open space on the board that currently doesn't have a shadow token, which is very advantageous. Usually you want to go back all the way to the beginning because you probably burned a lot of your patrol entering this horrible location. And I'm sorry, not entering, but they probably died by soaking up some of the hits. So you probably want to go back to the beginning so you start hiring some more patrols to go back in with you and go against the bad guy all over again. But if you decide to attack, you have to stay, which means you're going to have to suffer the consequences of possibly being attacked against this bad guy. So if you attack, you're going to do your damage, and then the next player in player order again is going to decide to attack, or they're going to decide to flee. Once all the players have made that decision in play order, again starting with the team captain, it's the turn of the bad guys to activate. And it's going to be activating just like a normal minion attack phase. We're going to start with the weakest minions. The team captain is going to pick which minion that, or which hero that group of minions is going to attack. And then the next level is going to pick, or be picked to attack one of our heroes. The next level will be pick one of our heroes to attack. And then finally, after all the 0 through 4 circle minions have attacked, then the Lord gets to attack. And again, that's all going to be based on the Lord's card. We're going to see that this guy gets to roll 6d12 attack. And if he manages to do 1 point of damage, that hero is going to be set on fire. That can be very, very dangerous to be set on fire because it's very hard to put out fire because you are stuck in the hell time here. So remember, you're going to be taking damage. So that's basically how the hell time works. Once all the heroes have decided to flee and return to other areas, or if they've been defeated and removed from the game, once that happens, all the heroes or all the minions that are left alive in that battle are going to return to the exact location that the Lord left. And they're all going to go to that specific space, which can be very, very important to understand because we could have pulled minions from all of these locations, but after the fight ends, they're all going to come back to this one specific location that the Lord came from. That's the complete hell time battle. And those are the complete rules for Planet Apocalypse. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this video series. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments below. I'll be sure to get to them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me Off the Shelf Board Game Reviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. I'll be sure to get back to you as quick as I can by email. If you enjoy this video, series, click that like button, click that subscribe button, and as always, thanks for watching. And don't forget, this video is part of a series. Check out the other videos in the series, the quick overview, my review, the sample gameplay. It's all going to work together to teach you how to play this wonderful game of Planet Apocalypse.